The desert doesn't forgive, it doesn't forget, and it sure as hell doesn't lie. Wade McColl had learned that truth the hard way over 58 years of living rough and dying slow. He'd seen men broken by heat, madness, and their own damn choices. The West had a way of taking everything from a man, his youth, his hope, sometimes even his name. But 6 bodies scattered in the dust like discarded poker chips? That was something even Wade hadn't seen before. His horse, a grizzled roan named Dust, slowed without being told. Animals knew death when they smelled it. Wade pulled the brim of his hat lower against the brutal afternoon sun and squinted at the scene ahead. 6 men, all face down or twisted at angles that suggested violence had found them quickly. Blood had pooled and dried in the sand, turning it the color of old rust. Vultures circled overhead, patient as sin, and in the center of it all, a woman. She sat slumped against a boulder, her dress torn and stained dark with blood. Her black hair hung in tangled curtains around her face. One arm cradled her ribs, the other lay limp at her side. She wasn't moving. Wade dismounted slow, his hand instinctively resting on the grip of his colt. His eyes swept the area. No other riders, no fresh tracks leading away. Whatever had happened here was over, but the woman was still breathing. He could see her chest rising and falling, shallow and labored. Wade approached carefully, his boots crunching softly against the sand. When he was 10 feet away, her head lifted. Her eyes, green with flecks of brown, like sunlight through leaves, locked onto his. They were fierce, defiant, and utterly exhausted. "Stop!" she rasped, her voice like gravel scraped across glass. Wade stopped. She swallowed hard, wincing. Don't come closer." "You're hurt," Wade said simply. His voice was low, weathered by years of shouting orders and whispering goodbyes. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I said I'm fine." Her jaw clenched. Just leave me here." Wade glanced at the bodies again. 6 grown men, all armed, judging by the revolvers and knives still strapped to their belts. He looked back at the woman. "What happened here?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible, she whispered, "They touched me and died." The words hung in the air like smoke. Wade's expression didn't change. He'd heard a lot of strange things in his life. This wasn't even in the top 10. He took another step forward. "I said don't!" She tried to push herself up, but her body betrayed her. She gasped, pain flashing across her face, and collapsed back against the boulder. Wade closed the distance in 3 long strides and knelt beside her. Up close, he could see the bruises blooming along her jaw, the split in her lip, the way her dress had been torn at the shoulder. "Who did this to you?" His voice was quieter now, dangerous. She turned her face away. "It doesn't matter. They're dead." "Did you kill them?" A bitter laugh escaped her, followed by a wince. "Does it look like I could kill 6 men?" Wade studied her. She was small, maybe 110 pounds soaking wet. Her hands were delicate, her frame lean. "Then how'd they die?" Her eyes met his again, and this time there was something else in them. Fear, shame, maybe both. I don't know," she whispered. "I never know. I fought back. And then they were dead." Wade looked at the men again, closer this time. No visible wounds on most of them. No bullet holes. "What's your name?" Wade asked. She hesitated. "Sarah. Sarah Redfield, Sarah." He pulled a canteen from his belt. "I'm Wade. And I'm not leaving you here to die." "You should." Her voice cracked. "Everyone who gets close to me, it always ends the same." "Yeah." Wade held the canteen to her lips. "Well, I've made it this far being stubborn." She drank slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. "I need to get you somewhere safe," Wade said. "There's nowhere safe for me." Sarah stared up at him, disbelief warring with hope in her eyes. "Why? Why would you help me?" Wade looked at her for a long moment. He thought about the badge he'd thrown in the dirt 15 years ago. The innocent man he'd hanged because everyone said he was guilty. "Because I've made enough mistakes," Wade said quietly. "Maybe it's time I did something right." Wade lifted Sarah into his arms before she could protest. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe grief had just made everything feel heavier for so long that real weight didn't register anymore. Wait, she started. Relax. I'm not going to drop you. That's not... She stopped, her breath catching as her injured side pressed against his chest. What if something happens to you? Wade looked down at her, his weathered face unreadable. Then I'll die doing something decent for once. He carried her to his horse. Dust snorted but didn't move as Wade carefully lifted Sarah into the saddle. She swayed, gripping the horn with white knuckles. Hold on, Wade said, swinging up behind her. His arms came around her to take the reins, and he felt her entire body go rigid. Easy, he murmured, his voice low and steady. I've got you. For a moment she didn't move. Then slowly, she leaned back against his chest. Just a little. Just enough. Wade nudged Dust into a walk, steering them away from the bodies and the blood and the vultures that were already descending. The sun was bleeding out across the horizon when Wade spotted the rock formation. It wasn't much, just an outcropping that formed a shallow cave. But it would keep the wind out. Out here, that was luxury. He dismounted carefully, then reached up to lift Sarah down. She stirred as his hands closed around her waist. Where? Her voice was hoarse. Safe, Wade said. For now. He carried her into the cave and set her down against the back wall, where the stone was smooth. She winced but didn't cry out. Wade worked quickly. He unsaddled Dust, gathered what dry brush he could find, and built a small fire near the cave entrance. The flames caught quickly, throwing dancing shadows against the rock walls. When he turned back, Sarah was watching him through half-closed eyes. You should run, she whispered, before whatever curse I carry finds you too. Wade knelt beside her, pulling his canteen and a clean cloth from his saddlebag. I don't believe in curses. Those 6 men did. The whole town did. Her voice was bitter. My mother was Cheyenne. My father was a trapper. Neither world wanted me, so they decided I must be cursed. Wade dampened the cloth. This is gonna hurt. Everything hurts. He gently pressed the cloth to the gash along her ribs. She hissed through her teeth but didn't pull away. Tell me what happened, Wade said, his hands steady as he cleaned the wound. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled. The town's been in a drought for 2 years, she finally said. Crops dying. Cattle, too. People started looking for someone to blame. The half-breed girl who lives on the edge of town, who knows healing herbs her mother taught her, who doesn't go to church. She laughed, but it was empty. It was easy to call me a witch. Wade's jaw tightened. He'd seen it before. Fear made people cruel. The preacher said I needed to be purified. Those 6 men, they came to my cabin 3 nights ago. They said if I submitted to them, if I let them cleanse me with... She stopped, swallowing hard. They said it would break the curse. Wade's hands stilled. When he spoke, his voice was cold as iron. They tried to... I fought. Sarah's eyes were fierce now, burning through the pain. I scratched and bit and screamed. And then... Her voice dropped to a whisper. And then they just... stopped. One by one, they grabbed their chests, their throats, like they couldn't breathe, and they fell. All 6? All 6. She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. I ran, took what I could carry, but they found me anyway, cornered me in the desert, said they'd finish what the others started. And then they died too, Wade finished. Sarah nodded, tears finally breaking free. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why this happens, but everyone who tries to hurt me, who touches me with violence... She looked up at him, desperate. Why aren't you dead? Wade met her gaze steadily. He'd finished cleaning the wound and was wrapping it now with strips of cloth from his pack. Maybe, he said quietly, because I'm not trying to hurt you. The words settled between them like a promise. Sarah watched as he secured the bandage, his movements careful and practiced. You've done this before. Used to be a lawman. Long time ago. Wade's voice was distant. Patched up more men than I care to remember. Some lived, some didn't. Why'd you stop? Wade's hands paused for just a moment. Because I hung an innocent man. Town said he was guilty, had witnesses, a trial, everything proper. I put the noose around his neck myself. He tied off the bandage. Found out 2 weeks later it was the sheriff's son who'd done it. Sheriff had paid people to lie. What did you do? Threw my badge in the dirt. Left town. Been riding ever since. Sarah studied his face in the firelight, the lines carved deep by sun and regret, the eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. You think saving me makes up for it? She asked softly. No. Wade settled back against the cave wall, pulling his hat low over his eyes. But it's a start. The fire burned lower. Sarah shifted, trying to find a position that didn't make her ribs scream. Wade noticed but didn't comment. Instead, he pulled his coat off and held it out. You're cold. She hesitated, then took it. The worn leather still held his warmth. She pulled it around her shoulders like armor. Thank you, she whispered. Wade didn't answer. But when Sarah finally closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling her under, she could have sworn she heard him say, Get some rest. Tomorrow we ride. Outside, the desert night deepened. Stars burned cold and bright overhead. And for the first time in 3 days, Sarah Redfield slept without dreaming of dead men's eyes. But Wade stayed awake, his hand resting on his Colt, watching the darkness beyond the firelight. Because he knew that violence always had a way of following blood. And sooner or later, someone would come looking for the woman who couldn't be killed. When they did, Wade would be ready. The fire crackled lower. Wade added another piece of brush, then glanced at Sarah. Her face had finally relaxed in sleep, the tension gone from her jaw. She looked younger like this, vulnerable. He'd protect that vulnerability with his last breath if he had to. The thought surprised him. He barely knew this woman. But something about the way she'd sat there, surrounded by death, refusing to apologize for surviving. It reminded him of something he'd lost a long time ago. Hope. Wade pulled his hat back over his eyes and settled in for a long night. The desert kept its secrets, but so did he, and tomorrow they'd both start running. Dawn broke cold and copper across the desert. Wade had been awake for hours, watching the sky shift from black to gray to gold. He'd learned long ago that sleeping too deeply in hostile territory was a good way to wake up dead. Sarah stirred as the first light hit the cave entrance. She sucked in a sharp breath, her hand immediately going to her bandaged ribs. Easy, Wade said without looking at her. He was crouched by the dying fire, heating water in his dented tin cup. You'll tear the stitches. You stitched me? Sarah pushed herself up slowly, wincing. Cleaned and stitched. You were out cold. Wade poured the hot water over a handful of dried herbs from his pack. Drink this. It'll help with the pain. She took the cup carefully, their fingers not quite touching. What is it? Willow bark. Learned it from a medicine woman down in New Mexico territory. He settled back on his heels, studying her. How do you feel? Like I got kicked by a mule. Sarah sipped the tea, grimacing at the bitter taste. Where'd you learn to stitch wounds? War. After that, lawman work. You see enough bullet holes and knife fights, you pick things up. Wade stood, moving to check on dust. We need to move soon. They'll be tracking you. Who? Whoever sent those 6 men. Small towns don't give up on their devils that easy. He began saddling the horse. They'll want to finish what they started. Sarah set the cup down, her hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, Wade noted, from anger. Let them come, she said quietly. I'm tired of running. Wade turned to look at her. You kill them. You prove them right. They'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. And if I don't? If I just keep running? Her green eyes flashed. How long before I'm dead anyway? Wade didn't have an answer for that. Sarah struggled to her feet, using the cave wall for support. Her legs were steadier than Wade expected. You said you were a lawman. You know how this works. They've already decided I'm guilty. Running or fighting, it doesn't matter. The ending's the same. Maybe. Wade finished tightening the saddle. Or maybe you just need to get far enough away that they stop looking. How far is that? Next territory. Next state? She laughed, bitter and sharp. There's nowhere in this country a half-breed witch can hide, Mr. McCall. Wade. What? Just Wade. He walked back to the fire, kicked dirt over the embers. And you're not a witch. You're a woman who defended herself. That's not what they'll say. That's not what anyone will believe. Sarah wrapped his coat tighter around herself. My mother used to tell me stories about women in her tribe who had gifts, who could feel sickness in people, who could sense death coming. She looked at her hands again. What if I do have something? What if it's not a curse, but something my mother passed down? Wade was quiet for a moment. Then, does it matter what it is? Sarah's head snapped up. Of course it matters. Why? Wade's voice was calm, measured. You didn't ask for it, didn't choose it, and from what you told me, you only used it to survive. That's not evil. That's human. She stared at him, something shifting behind her eyes. You really believe that? I've met evil, Sarah. Real evil. Men who hurt for pleasure, who kill because it makes them feel powerful. Wade picked up his rifle, checked the chamber. You're not that. Not even close. Then what am I? Unlucky. He shouldered his pack. But luck changes. Come on, we're burning daylight. Sarah took a step forward, then stopped. Where are we going? West. There's a canyon about 2 days' ride. Hard to track through, after that. Wade shrugged. We figure it out. You keep saying we. You got somewhere else to be? She didn't answer, because they both knew she didn't. They rode for hours in near silence. Wade kept them off the main trails, following deer paths and dry creek beds that wound through the scrub and rock. Sarah sat in front of him again, her back straight despite the pain he knew she must be feeling. Around midday, Wade called a halt near a thin trickle of water that passed for a stream. He helped Sarah down, noting how she tried to hide the grimace. Drink, he ordered, handing her the canteen, and eat something. He pulled out 2 pieces of dried meat and some hardtack. It wasn't much, but it was what they had. Sarah ate slowly, methodically. When she finished, she surprised him by speaking first. Why didn't you ask? Wade raised an eyebrow. Ask what? If I really did kill them, those men, if maybe I do have some kind of power. She looked at him directly. Doesn't that scare you? Wade considered the question seriously. He unwrapped his own portion of meat, bit off a piece, chewed thoughtfully. I've been scared plenty of times in my life, he finally said. Scared of dying, scared of living, scared I'd become the kind of man I spent years hunting. He took a drink from the canteen. But scared of a woman who defended herself against 6 men trying to hurt her? Number, that doesn't scare me. It should. Maybe. Wade's eyes met hers. But I've done things that should scare you too. That innocent man I hung, his name was Thomas Birch. He had a wife, 2 kids. I can still hear them screaming when the trap door dropped. Sarah was quiet. Point is, Wade continued, we've all got blood on our hands one way or another. Question isn't whether we've done bad things. It's whether we keep doing them. And you think I can stop? I think you never started. Wade stood, offered her his hand. Come on, we've got ground to cover. This time, Sarah took his hand without hesitation. They rode until the sun began its slow descent, painting the rocks in shades of rust and gold. Wade found another sheltered spot, a cluster of boulders that formed a natural windbreak, and they made camp. As Wade built another small fire, Sarah gathered what sparse firewood she could find. Her movements were slower, more careful, but she didn't complain. When the flames were steady, they sat across from each other. The silence between them felt different now, less wary, more comfortable. Can I ask you something? Sarah said finally. Depends on the question. Why'd you really stop? After you found out about Thomas Birch, she pulled the coat tighter. You could have stayed. Tried to make it right. Wade stared into the fire. Because I realized something. Being a lawman doesn't make you right. Badge doesn't make you good. It just makes you powerful. And power. He trailed off. Power corrupts, Sarah finished softly. No. Wade looked up at her. Power reveals. You find out real quick what kind of man you are when people have to do what you say. His jaw tightened. Turns out I was the kind of man who'd kill an innocent person because it was easier than questioning the truth. That's not fair. You didn't know. I should have. The words came out hard, final. A man was begging for his life, swearing he was innocent, and I put that noose around his neck anyway. Because the town wanted blood. Because the evidence looked right. Because I was tired and didn't want to fight. Sarah watched him carefully. So you've been punishing yourself ever since. I've been trying not to make the same mistake twice. Is that what I am? She leaned forward slightly. Another chance to get it right? Wade met her gaze. In the firelight, her eyes looked more gold than green. Maybe. Or maybe you're just someone who needed help, and I happened to be there. You don't strike me as a man who does things by accident. A ghost of a smile touched Wade's lips. And you don't strike me as a woman who needs rescuing. Then what am I? Someone worth not giving up on. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was quite ready to name. Sarah looked away first, her cheeks flushing. You're very different from other men I've known. How so? You listen. You don't assume. And you... She hesitated. You look at me like I'm a person. Not a problem to solve or a curse to avoid. That's because you are a person. Wade added another stick to the fire. Rest of it's just noise. They fell quiet again. The desert night crept in, bringing cold and stars and the distant howl of coyotes. Sarah shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. Wade noticed. Here. He moved closer, positioning himself so she could lean against his shoulder. It'll help with your ribs. She hesitated only a moment before settling against him. His body was warm and solid, and for the first time in days, she felt something almost like safety. Wade, she murmured. Yeah. Thank you. For not being afraid. His arm came around her shoulders, careful of her injuries. Thank you for not dying on me. Sarah smiled despite herself. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and sure, against her back. Outside, the desert stretched vast and indifferent. But here, in this small circle of firelight, two broken people found something neither had expected. A reason to keep going. The third day dawned with Sarah's fever. Wade knew something was wrong the moment he woke. She was still leaning against him, but her skin was hot to the touch, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. Sarah. He shifted carefully, turning her to face him. Her eyes were glazed, unfocused. Sarah, can you hear me? She murmured something incoherent. Infection. The wound must have been dirtier than he thought, or maybe he'd missed something. Wade cursed under his breath and laid her down flat. He unwrapped the bandages with careful hands. The gash along her ribs was angry and red, the skin around it hot and swollen. Not as bad as it could be, but bad enough. Wade worked quickly. He built up the fire, boiled water, and pulled out the small tin of carbolic acid he'd been carrying for the better part of a decade. It would hurt like hell, but it might save her life. This is gonna sting, he muttered, knowing she probably couldn't hear him. He poured the diluted acid over the wound. Sarah's eyes flew open and she screamed, a raw animal sound that made Wade's chest tighten. But he held her down firmly, cleaning the infection as thoroughly as he dared. I know. I'm sorry. His voice was low, soothing. Almost done. Just a little more. When he finished, Sarah had passed out again. Wade wrapped her in his bedroll and his coat, trying to keep her warm despite the fever raging through her. All he could do now was wait. He spent the day tending her, forcing water between her lips, pressing cool cloths to her forehead, checking the wound for signs of worsening, and talking. Wade wasn't a man of many words, but he talked anyway. About nothing and everything. About the year he'd spent in the Colorado mountains. About a dog he'd once owned and named Biscuit. About how coffee never tasted right anymore, since he'd lost his good tin cup in a poker game. He talked because he'd heard once that people could hear you, even when they couldn't respond, and he needed Sarah to know she wasn't alone. As the sun reached its peak, Sarah's fever broke. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking against the harsh light. Wade? Relief flooded through him. Welcome back. What? What happened? Infection. I cleaned it out. He helped her sit up slowly, supporting her back. How do you feel? Like I died and came back. Sarah's voice was hoarse. Did I, did I say anything? Nothing I could make out. Why? She shook her head. Sometimes when I'm sick, I see things, dream things. Wade offered her water. What kind of things? Sarah drank deeply before answering. My mother. She visits me, tells me. She trailed off. Tells you what? That I'm not cursed, that what I have is a gift, that I just need to learn to control it. Sarah looked at him. Do you think that's possible? That I could learn? Wade thought about it. I think people learn all sorts of things when they have to. And I think your mother wouldn't steer you wrong. She's dead. Doesn't mean she's not right. A weak smile touched Sarah's lips. You're a strange man, Wade McCall. So I've been told. He made her eat a little, then insisted she rest more. But as the afternoon wore on, Sarah became increasingly restless. I need to move, she finally said. I'm not an invalid. You had a fever this morning, and now I don't. She pushed herself to her feet, swaying only slightly. Please, I need to feel like I'm not helpless. Wade studied her, then nodded. All right, but slow. And you tell me if it's too much. They walked together through the scattered rocks and scrub. Sarah moved stiffly but steadily, one hand pressed to her ribs. Wade stayed close without crowding her. Tell me about your wife, Sarah said suddenly. Wade's steps faltered. What makes you think I had a wife? The way you take care of me, like you've done it before. She glanced at him. And you talk in your sleep sometimes. He was quiet for a long moment. Her name was Caroline. We were married 7 years. What happened? Cholera swept through our town when I was off chasing horse thieves. By the time I got back, he stopped walking. She was already gone. They'd buried her 2 days before. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it hurt less. Sarah touched his arm lightly. Do I remind you of her? Wade looked at her, really looked, at the dark hair and fierce eyes, at the stubborn set of her jaw and the way she refused to break despite everything. No, he said honestly. Caroline was gentle, kind. She believed in the goodness of people even when they didn't deserve it. He paused. You're different. You've had to fight for everything. It shows. Sarah's hand dropped. Is that bad? It's real. Wade met her gaze. And it's honest. I respect that. They continued walking. The sun was starting its descent, painting everything in warm gold. Wade? Sarah stopped, turning to face him fully. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's to make up for past mistakes. I need the truth. He looked at her for a long moment. The desert wind tugged at her hair, whipping it across her face. She pushed it back impatiently, waiting. Because when I saw you surrounded by those bodies, Wade said slowly, the first thing I thought wasn't, what did she do? It was, who hurt her? And that's, he struggled for words. That's not something I would have thought 15 years ago. Back then, I would have seen a half-breed woman and 6 dead white men, and I would have assumed you were guilty. But you don't now. No. Because I've learned that the truth is usually the opposite of what everyone believes. He took a step closer. And because something in your eyes reminded me of what I saw in my own mirror for years. The look of someone who's been blamed for things they couldn't control. Sarah's breath caught. Is that why you think I'm worth saving? Because we're both broken? No. Wade's voice was firm. I think you're worth saving because you're still fighting. Because despite everything, you haven't given up. That takes a kind of strength most people don't have. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about not feeling afraid. It's about moving forward anyway. They stood there, inches apart, the desert vast and empty around them. Sarah's hand came up slowly, hovering near Wade's chest. Can I? She asked softly. Wade went very still. Can you what? Touch you. Without violence, without fear. Her eyes searched his. I need to know if I can. Wade understood what she was asking. If she could touch someone and not have death follow. If she could be something other than dangerous. Yes, he said simply. Sarah's palm pressed flat against his chest, over his heart. She could feel it beating, steady and strong, alive. Seconds passed, then a minute. Wade didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there, letting her feel the proof of his continued existence. You're not dying, Sarah whispered, wonder in her voice. No. Why not? Why are you different? Wade covered her hand with his own. Because I'm not trying to hurt you. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe your gift, curse, whatever it is, maybe it only protects you from violence. Or maybe you're just too stubborn to die. A smile tugged at Wade's lips. That too. Sarah's other hand came up, resting against his shoulder. She was close enough now that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, close enough to feel her breath. I haven't touched anyone without fear since I was a child, she said quietly. I'd forgotten what it felt like. What does it feel like? Safe. Her voice broke slightly. It feels safe. Wade's arm came around her waist, careful of her injured ribs. You are safe. I promise you that. They stood that way for a long moment, two people finding comfort in simple human contact. No violence, no death, just warmth and heartbeats and the sound of breathing. Finally, Sarah stepped back. Her cheeks were flushed, but her eyes were clear. Thank you, she said. For what? For letting me be human again. They walked back to camp as the sun set, and for the first time since the massacre, Sarah felt something besides fear when she looked at her hands. She felt hope. The fourth morning brought riders. Wade spotted them just after dawn, 6 shapes moving across the desert floor about 2 miles out. He'd been watering dust at a small spring when the sun hit the dust cloud just right, revealing the silhouettes. Sarah, his voice was low, urgent. We've got company. She was beside him instantly, still wrapping the fresh bandages he'd applied that morning. How many? 6, maybe more behind them. Sarah's face went pale. They're from the town. They have to be. Wade was already moving, breaking camp with practiced efficiency. Get on the horse. Wade! Now, Sarah. The edge in his voice left no room for argument. She climbed onto dust, wincing as the movement pulled her healing ribs. Wade swung up behind her and kicked the horse into motion. They rode hard, pushing dust as fast as they dared across the broken terrain. Wade kept glancing back, tracking the riders. They were gaining. They're going to catch us, Sarah said, her voice tight. Not if I can help it. Wade steered them toward a rocky outcropping he'd noticed the day before. There's a canyon ahead. Narrow entrance. We can make a stand there. You mean you can make a stand? You should do exactly what I tell you and stay alive. Wade's arm tightened around her waist. That's all that matters. They reached the canyon with maybe 10 minutes to spare. Wade practically threw Sarah off the horse and shoved Dust's reins into her hands. Take him deeper into the canyon. There's a split about 100 yards in. You'll see it. Wait there. What are you going to do? Wade pulled his Winchester from its scabbard, checking the chamber. Buy us time. Now go. Wade! Go! Sarah hesitated one more second, her eyes locked on his. Then she turned and led Dust deeper into the canyon. Wade positioned himself behind a large boulder near the canyon entrance. It gave him good cover and a clear line of sight. He counted his ammunition. 14 rounds in the rifle, 6 in his Colt, 20 shots against however many men were coming. He'd faced worse odds before. The riders appeared 5 minutes later, slowing as they approached the canyon. They'd seen Dust's tracks leading in. Wade recognized the man in front, tall, wearing a black coat and a preacher's collar. The same preacher who'd sent 6 men to purify Sarah. McCall! The preacher's voice echoed off the canyon walls. We know you're in there. Send out the witch and we'll let you ride away. Wade didn't answer. He sighted down the rifle, tracking the preacher's movement. She's cursed, McCall. Touched by the devil. Those men who died, she killed them with dark magic. Those men, Wade called back, his voice carrying clearly, tried to rape her. She defended herself. That's not murder. That's survival. She's poisoned your mind. Another man rode forward, older with a sheriff's badge glinting on his chest. That's what her kind does. They seduce righteous men, lead them astray. Wade's shot took the sheriff's hat clean off his head. The canyon exploded with echoes. The horses spooked. Men shouted and dove for cover. Next one goes through flesh. Wade worked the rifle's lever, chambering another round. You're not taking her. There's 6 of us and 1 of you, the preacher shouted. You can't win this fight. Maybe not, but I can make damn sure you pay for trying. Gunfire erupted. Bullets pinged off rocks and whistled past Wade's position. He returned fire methodically, not wasting shots. 2 rounds. 3. A man screamed. Wade had clipped his shoulder. Cease fire, the preacher yelled. Cease fire. The shooting stopped. In the ringing silence, Wade reloaded. You've killed before, McCall. I know your history. The preacher's voice was venomous now. You hung an innocent man, and now you protect a murderess. What kind of lawman are you? The kind who learned from his mistakes. Wade's jaw was set, his eyes hard. You want her? You're going to have to kill me first. So be it, the preacher signaled. 3 men dismounted and began working their way up the canyon walls, trying to flank Wade's position. Smart, professional. These weren't just angry townspeople. They'd brought hired guns. Wade dropped 2 of them with careful shots before they made it halfway up. The third made it to cover and started laying down suppressing fire. This was going to get ugly. Wade! Sarah's voice came from behind him. He spun, but she was already there, carrying his Colt and a determined expression. You can't hold them all off alone. I told you to stay hidden. And I told you I'm tired of hiding. She pressed the Colt into his hand. You take the rifle. I'll cover the flanks. Sarah, you don't know how to... She pulled a small pistol from her dress. Where the hell had she been hiding that? And fired. The third man on the canyon wall jerked and tumbled down with a cry. Wade stared at her. Where did you learn to shoot? My father. He said a woman alone needed to know how to protect herself. Sarah's face was set. He was right. No time to argue. Wade turned back to the main group, who were regrouping for another charge. Last chance, McCall, the preacher shouted. Give us the witch and live. Wade's answer was another shot, this one punching through the preacher's shoulder. The man went down screaming. That's my answer, Wade roared. Now get the hell out of my sight before I start aiming for hearts. The remaining men exchanged glances. Their leader was down. 3 of their number were dead or wounded, and the man in the canyon was clearly willing to die before surrendering. The old sheriff raised his hand slowly. We're leaving. But this isn't over, McCall. We'll be back with more men, and next time you won't have the advantage. Next time, Wade said, his voice deadly calm, you'll find an empty canyon, because we'll be gone, and you'll spend the rest of your miserable lives looking over your shoulders, wondering if the witch you tried to murder is coming for you. The threat hung in the air. Sarah stepped up beside Wade, her pistol still raised, her eyes blazing. You tell your town something, she called out. Tell them I never asked for what I am. I never wanted to hurt anyone. But if they keep coming for me, if they keep sending men to violate and kill me, her voice dropped, becoming something cold and ancient, then I'll show them what a real curse looks like. The men retreated, dragging their wounded. Within minutes, they were dust on the horizon. Wade lowered his rifle, his hands shaking slightly with adrenaline. Well, that was a hell of a speech. Sarah's facade crumbled. She sagged against the boulder, her face pale. I thought I was going to die. You and me both. Wade caught her as her legs gave out. But we didn't. We're still here. She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Why do you keep risking your life for me? Wade was quiet for a moment, then, because somewhere along the way, you stopped being a stranger I helped. You became someone He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Someone you what? Someone I don't want to lose. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Sarah's hand came up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. I don't want to lose you either, she whispered. Wade pulled her close, careful of her ribs. She buried her face against his chest, and he felt her shoulders shake with silent sobs, relief fear, exhaustion, all pouring out at once. "It's okay," he murmured into her hair. "It's over. They're gone. For now." "For now," he agreed. "But we'll figure it out. We'll keep moving. Find somewhere safe." "There is nowhere safe." "Then we'll make somewhere safe." Wade pulled back just enough to look at her. "I'm not giving up on you, Sarah. Not now. Not ever." She searched his face, looking for the lie, the doubt. But all she saw was stubborn determination and something else, something that made her breath catch. "Kiss me," she said suddenly. Wade froze. "Sarah, please, I need to know that I can have this, that I can want someone and not have it end in death." Her eyes were desperate. "Please, Wade." For a long moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, carefully, he cupped her face in his rough hands and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered without words. When they pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Still alive," Sarah whispered, wonder in her voice. "Still alive," Wade confirmed. She laughed, the sound breaking into something between tears and joy. "I can kiss you. I can touch you. You don't die. Seems that way. Why? What makes you different?" Wade thought about it. "Maybe I'm not. Maybe you are. Maybe you've always had control over this thing, and you just didn't know it. Or maybe," Sarah said softly, "the curse isn't about touching. It's about intention. They wanted to hurt me. You want to." She trailed off, color rising in her cheeks. "I want to protect you," Wade finished, "and I want other things. But only if you want them too." Sarah's hand found his. "I do. Want them, I mean. I'm just—" She looked away. "I'm scared. Of me. Of hoping. Of wanting something good and having it taken away again." She met his eyes. "Everyone I've ever cared about has died or left me. What if I don't?" Wade squeezed her hand. "What if I stay? What if we figure this out together? You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise to try." He pulled her close again. "That's all anyone can do, Sarah. Try." They stood there holding each other as the sun climbed higher. Two people who'd been alone so long they'd forgotten what connection felt like. But they were remembering now. And in that canyon, surrounded by bullet scars and blood, something fragile and precious began to grow. Trust. They rode until nightfall, pushing deeper into territory Wade knew would be harder to track. The landscape shifted from desert scrub to rocky highlands, where twisted juniper trees clung to slopes and ravens circled overhead. By the time Wade called a halt, Sarah was swaying in the saddle, her reserves completely spent. He caught her as she slid down, her face gray with pain and exhaustion. "That's it," Wade said firmly. "We're camping here for a full day, maybe two. You need rest. We need to keep moving. You need to heal." His voice was gentle but immovable. "Another fever could kill you, Sarah, and I'm not losing you to infection after we survive those bastards." She didn't have the strength to argue. Wade found them shelter in an overhang that formed a shallow cave. It wasn't perfect, but it was defensible and hidden from casual view. He built a fire, then literally forced Sarah to eat some of their dwindling supplies. "I'm not hungry," she protested weakly. "Don't care." "Eat anyway." She managed half the dried meat before her eyes started drooping. Wade caught the food before it fell from her hand and guided her down onto his bedroll. "Sleep," he ordered. "What about you?" "I'll keep watch." "Wade, you haven't slept in—" "Sleep, Sarah." This time she didn't argue. Within minutes, she was out. Wade settled himself near the cave entrance, rifle across his knees, and watched the night deepen. His body ached, 58 years of hard living catching up to him all at once. But he'd push through. He always did. Around midnight, Sarah began to whimper in her sleep. Small sounds of distress that made Wade's chest tighten. He moved to her side, checking for fever, but her skin was cool. Nightmare then. "Sarah." He touched her shoulder gently. "Sarah, wake up." Her eyes flew open, wild and unseeing. She lashed out, her fist connecting with his jaw before she fully registered where she was. Shit! Wade caught her wrists. Easy! It's me! It's Wade! Recognition flooded her face, followed immediately by horror. Oh God, I hit you! I'm sorry, I didn't mean… It's fine. No, it's not. What if I'd… Sarah. Wade's voice was calm, grounding. Look at me. I'm fine. You had a nightmare, that's all. She was shaking now, tears streaming down her face. I dreamed they caught us. That they held you down and made you watch while they… She couldn't finish. Wade pulled her into his arms, holding her as she cried. They didn't. We got away. We're safe. For how long? He didn't answer because they both knew the truth. They'd bought time, but not safety. Not yet. When Sarah's tears finally subsided, she pulled back just enough to look at him. I'm sorry. For hitting you. For being weak. For… Stop. Wade's thumb brushed away the tears on her cheek. You're not weak. You're human. There's a difference. I don't feel human. I feel like a curse that destroys everything it touches. Then I must be blind, Wade said quietly, because all I see is a woman who survived hell and kept her humanity anyway. Sarah stared at him, something shifting in her expression. Without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was different from the kiss in the canyon, not tentative or questioning, but desperate, seeking comfort, connection, proof of life. Wade responded carefully, one hand coming up to cradle the back of her head. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he searched her face. Sarah, are you sure? You've been through trauma. Sometimes people… I know what I'm doing. Her voice was steady now. For the first time in years, I know exactly what I want. And what's that? To feel something besides fear. She touched his face. To be close to someone who doesn't see me as a monster or a victim. How do I see you? Like I'm worth something. Her eyes shone. Like I'm real. Wade was quiet for a long moment. Then, you are real, and you're worth more than you know. Show me, she whispered. Wade hesitated. The honorable thing would be to stop this. She was injured, traumatized, vulnerable. But the way she was looking at him, not with desperation, but with clear-eyed choice. Are you sure? He asked one more time. Because once we cross this line, we can't go back. And I need to know you're choosing this for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? Not because you're grateful. Not because you think you owe me. Not because you want to prove something. Sarah took his face in both hands. I'm choosing this because for the first time in my life, someone touched me and I didn't feel afraid. Because when I look at you, I see someone who understands what it's like to carry ghosts. And because, she swallowed, because I want you. Not as a protector or a savior, as a man. Wade searched her eyes one more time. Then he kissed her again, slower now, deeper. What happened next unfolded like a conversation spoken without words. Careful hands, whispered reassurances. Moments of hesitation followed by gentle encouragement. Wade treated her like something precious and breakable, even when she urged him to go faster, harder. He knew what trauma did to bodies and souls. He knew that real intimacy required patience. They learned each other slowly. The topography of scars, his from bullets and knives, hers from violence and survival. The maps of what brought pleasure and what brought pain. The language of breathing and heartbeats and the small sounds of connection. Afterwards, they lay tangled together beneath Wade's coat, the fire burning low. Sarah's head rested on his chest, her hand splayed over his heart. I didn't hurt you, she whispered, wonder in her voice. No. I touched you without fear, without death following. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then, maybe I'm not cursed after all. Wade's arm tightened around her. You never were. How can you be sure? Because curses don't choose. You do. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. You chose not to hurt me. That's not magic or supernatural power. That's just you, being human. Sarah absorbed this, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his skin. What happens now? Now we rest. Tomorrow we keep moving. That's not what I meant. Wade knew what she meant. I don't know, he admitted. I haven't thought that far ahead. I've been focused on keeping us alive. Do you regret this? God, no. The answer came immediately, fierce. Do you? No. Sarah shifted to look at him. But I'm scared. Of what? Of wanting this. Wanting you, and then losing it. Her eyes glistened. Everyone I've ever cared about has been taken from me. What if we stop borrowing trouble? Wade cupped her face. We've got tonight. We've got each other. That's more than either of us had yesterday. Is it enough? For now? He kissed her forehead. Yes. They lay there as the fire died to embers. Outside, the wind whispered through the junipers. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang to the moon. And for a few stolen hours, two people who'd been running finally found a moment of peace. Sarah drifted off first, her breathing evening out into the deep rhythm of exhausted sleep. Wade stayed awake, his mind turning over everything that had happened. He'd broken every rule he'd set for himself, got involved, formed an attachment, allowed himself to care about someone who would probably get him killed. And he couldn't bring himself to regret a single moment, because somewhere in the past 4 days, Sarah Redfield had stopped being a responsibility and become something else entirely. Someone he'd fight for, someone he'd die for, maybe even someone he'd try to live for. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt almost like hope. Wade pulled Sarah closer, breathing in the scent of her hair, dust and wood smoke, and something uniquely her. She murmured in her sleep but didn't wake. I won't let them take you, he whispered into the darkness. I promise. It was a promise he meant to keep, even if it cost him everything. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead. The desert kept its secrets, and two people slept in each other's arms, neither knowing what tomorrow would bring. But for now, in this moment, they had enough. They had each other. The attack came at dawn. Wade woke to the sound of horses. Too many horses, too close. His hand went to his Colt even before his eyes opened. Sarah. His voice was urgent but quiet. Wake up, now. She was up instantly, the past days having trained her to react without question. How many? Wade peered out from their shelter. In the gray pre-dawn light, he counted at least a dozen riders surrounding their position. They'd been found. And this time, the hunters had come prepared. More than before. Wade's jaw set. They brought an army. The same sheriff from yesterday rode at the front, his arm in a sling. Behind him, Wade recognized townspeople. Shopkeepers, ranchers, men with families who'd been convinced they were doing God's work. McCole! The sheriff's voice echoed off the rocks. There's no way out this time. You're surrounded. Send out the witch and we'll let you live. Wade checked his ammunition. 8 rounds left in the rifle. 4 in the Colt, against a dozen men. Sarah's hand found his arm. Wade, you can't fight them all. Watch me. No. Her voice was quiet but firm. This has to end. It will, when they're gone, or when I give myself up. Wade's head snapped around. The hell you will. Listen to me. Sarah's eyes were calm, resolved. If I surrender, they'll let you go. You can ride away, live your life, without you. Wade, no. He took her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. I didn't save you just to watch you die. I didn't. Last night didn't. He struggled for words. You matter to me, Sarah. Maybe that makes me a fool, but I don't care. I'm not letting you walk out there to be murdered. Then what do we do? McCole, the sheriff again. You've got 1 minute. Then we're coming in. Wade's mind raced. The cave had only one entrance. They'd be trapped. But if he could create a diversion, maybe Sarah could slip out while the attention was on him. Can you ride? He asked suddenly. What? Can you ride? Alone? Sarah's eyes widened. You're not... There's a crack in the back of this cave. Too narrow for me, but you might fit. Wade was already moving, shoving supplies into a pack. It leads to the other side of this ridge. Dust is ground-tied there. You take him and run. Wade, no! 30 seconds. I won't leave you. Wade grabbed her face, kissed her hard and desperate. You have to. Because if they catch you, everything we've done means nothing. But if you get away, he pressed his forehead to hers. If you get away, maybe there's still hope. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. I can't. I can't do this without you. Yes, you can. Wade's voice was gentle, despite the urgency. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You don't need me, Sarah. You never did. That's not true. Time's up, McCall. Gunfire erupted. Bullets ricocheted off the cave walls. Wade shoved Sarah toward the back. Go! Now! Wade, I'll find you. He turned, raising his rifle. I promise I'll find you. But right now you need to run. Sarah hesitated one more heartbeat. Then she squeezed through the crack in the rock, the pack Wade had given her scraping against stone. Wade waited until he heard her drop to the other side. Then he started shooting. He made every shot count. The first 3 dropped men before they could take cover. The 4th shattered the sheriff's gun hand. The 5th sent them all scrambling. That's right, Wade roared. You want to kill someone? Come get me. Leave the woman out of it. She's cursed, someone shouted. She killed 6 men with witchcraft. She killed 6 men who tried to rape her. Wade fired again. And if that's witchcraft, then every woman with a gun is a witch. You're not righteous. You're just scared cowards who can't accept that a woman defended herself. More gunfire. Wade felt a bullet graze his shoulder, hot and sharp. He ducked behind cover, reloading. 3 rounds left. He could hear them moving, trying to flank his position. Smart. Professional. These weren't just townspeople anymore. Someone had hired actual gunmen. Wade fired twice more, then holstered the rifle and pulled his Colt. 4 shots. Against how many men left? 8? 9? The math wasn't in his favor, but math had never stopped him before. Last chance, McCall, the sheriff called. Surrender now and we'll make it quick. Go to hell! Wade burst from cover, firing. 1 man down. 2. His Colt clicked empty. He drew his knife, Caroline's knife, the one she'd given him on their wedding day, and closed with the nearest attacker. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Wade felt steel bite into his side but ignored it, driving his own blade home. The man screamed and went limp. Wade rolled, searching for another weapon. His hand closed around a drop revolver just as someone clubbed him from behind. Pain exploded through his skull. The world tilted. He tried to rise, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. Rough hands grabbed him, hauling him upright. Blood ran down his face from somewhere. The sheriff limped over, his face purple with rage. Where is she? Gone. Wade spat blood. And you'll never find her. Then you'll die for nothing. I'm dying for something that matters. Wade met the sheriff's eyes. Can you say the same? The sheriff raised his gun. Wade closed his eyes, thinking of Sarah, hoping she'd made it far enough. Hoping. A sound split the air. Not a gunshot. Something else. Something that made every man present freeze. A whistle, sharp and piercing, coming from the ridge above. Everyone looked up. Sarah stood there, backlit by the rising sun. Dust was beside her, and in her hands. Wade couldn't believe what he was seeing. She held her hands up, palms out, in a gesture that was half surrender, half threat. And around her the air seemed to shimmer. Let him go, Sarah said, her voice carrying impossibly clear. Or I'll show you what a real curse looks like. She's bluffing, the sheriff snarled. She's just a woman. Am I? Sarah's eyes seemed to glow in the dawn light. Those 6 men tried to touch me. They died. You brought 12 more. How many do you think will survive? The men exchanged nervous glances. Superstition warred with anger on their faces. I didn't want this, Sarah continued. I never wanted to hurt anyone. But if you force my hand, she lowered her arms slowly. If you make me choose between Wade's life and yours, there won't be a choice. Shoot her, the sheriff ordered. No one moved. I said shoot her. Still nothing. The men were backing away now, hands trembling on their guns, because Sarah was walking forward. 1 step, 2. And with each step, the air around her seemed to crackle with something indefinable. Not magic, not exactly, but something that made every survival instinct scream danger. "I am Sarah Redfield," she said, her voice ringing out. "Daughter of the Cheyenne, daughter of the West, and I am done running." She was close now, close enough that Wade could see her face, could see the tears on her cheeks, could see the fierce determination that had kept her alive through everything. "You wanted a witch?" Sarah stopped 10 feet from the sheriff. "Here I am. But I'm not the monster you think. I'm just someone who refuses to die quietly." The sheriff's gun wavered. You're an abomination." "No." Sarah's voice was sad now. "I'm just someone you couldn't control. And that scared you more than any curse ever could." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then slowly, the sheriff lowered his gun. "Go," he said quietly. "Take your man and go. But if I ever see either of you again—" "You won't." Sarah moved to Wade's side, helping him stand. "Because we're done with this territory. Done with people who see kindness as weakness and survival as sin." Wade leaned heavily on her, blood still streaming from his head wound. Together they stumbled toward dust. The men parted before them like water. When they reached the horse, Wade turned back one last time. "You tell your town something. You tell them that the only curse here was their own hatred, and someday that's going to consume them." Then he and Sarah rode away. They didn't stop until the sun was high and the town was miles behind them. Finally, Wade slumped forward, his strength giving out. Sarah caught him, easing him down into the shade of a rock. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. "Stay with me," she whispered, her hands already working to clean his wounds. "Don't you dare leave me now." Wade's eyes opened, focusing on her with effort. "Did you really have powers back there?" A small smile touched Sarah's lips. "No, but they believed I did. Sometimes that's enough. Smart. I learned from the best." She pressed a cloth to his head wound. "Now shut up and let me save your life for once." As Sarah worked, Wade felt himself drifting. But it wasn't the cold drift toward death. It was something warmer, safer. He'd found something worth living for, and she'd found the strength to save them both. Maybe that was the real miracle. 3 years had passed since the day they'd ridden away from that blood-soaked territory, and the desert had been kind in keeping their secrets. The small ranch sat nestled in a valley where 3 states met, and no lawman bothered to look too closely at faces or ask too many questions about the past. Wade had bought the land with what remained of his savings, and together they'd built something that resembled a life. Sarah stood on the porch of their cabin, one hand resting on her swollen belly, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar shades of gold and crimson. Behind her, she could hear Wade inside, talking softly to their daughter. Emma, 2 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's gray eyes, a miracle neither of them had dared to hope for. "Mama!" Emma's voice rang out as she toddled onto the porch, Wade following close behind. "Papa says the horses need water." "Does he now?" Sarah smiled, scooping the little girl into her arms despite her pregnancy. "And did Papa mention who's going to help him?" "Me," Emma declared proudly. Wade appeared in the doorway, his hair grayer now, his face more lined, but his eyes held something they hadn't in decades. Peace. "You shouldn't be lifting her," he said, though his tone was more amused than scolding. "Doctors said to take it easy." "Doctors said a lot of things." Sarah kissed Emma's forehead before setting her down. "Go help your father. I'll get dinner started." As Wade and Emma headed toward the barn, hand in tiny hand, Sarah paused to watch them. The big, gruff former lawman who'd sworn he'd never have a family again, now patiently explaining to a toddler the proper way to pump water for horses. Life had a funny way of healing what seemed permanently broken. The ranch was small but thriving. They raised horses mostly, selling to travelers and the occasional army outpost that didn't ask questions. Wade's reputation as a horsebreaker had spread, though he went by a different name now. William Caldwell. Sarah had become Claire. Simple names, forgettable names. Emma didn't know her parents had once been hunted, didn't know her mother had been called a witch, or that her father had once hung an innocent man. She knew only that her mama could heal sick animals with herbs and gentle hands, and that her papa told the best bedtime stories about cowboys and wild mustangs. Someday they'd tell her the truth. But not yet. Let her have a few more years of innocence first. That evening, after Emma was asleep and the dishes were washed, Sarah and Wade sat on the porch as they did most nights. His arm was around her shoulders, her hand resting on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Still strong, still steady, still alive. "You ever regret it?" Sarah asked quietly. "Giving up your name, your past, everything you were." Wade was quiet for a moment, considering. "I gave up a name that was tied to guilt and failure. What I got in return?" He pressed a kiss to her temple. "A woman who makes me want to be better. A daughter who looks at me like I hung the moon. Another child on the way." His hand covered hers on her belly. "No, I don't regret a damn thing. Even the bounty on your head? Especially that. Makes life interesting." He grinned. "Besides, they're looking for an old lawman and a witch, not a horse rancher and his healer wife." Sarah laughed softly. "We should tell them. The people who thought I was cursed. Show them I built a life, had a family, that their witch found happiness. They wouldn't believe it, and they don't deserve to know." Wade's voice was firm. "We don't owe them our joy, Sarah. We earned this, every moment of it." She tilted her head up to look at him. "I never thanked you. For that day, for choosing me over everything else. You thank me every morning when I wake up and you're still here." Wade's eyes were serious now. "That's all the thanks I'll ever need." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged, one by one, like promises written in light. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called. The horses nickered softly in the barn. And inside the cabin, their daughter dreamed innocent dreams. The past was dead, buried in the desert along with the men who tried to destroy them. What remained was this: a family, a home, a future they'd fought for with blood and bullets and stubborn, relentless hope. Sarah's hand found Wade's, their fingers intertwining like they had 1,000 times before. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." Wade's voice was rough with emotion. "Every damn day, I love you more." The desert wind whispered through the valley, carrying away old ghosts and making room for new beginnings. And in that small ranch where 3 states met, 2 people who'd been cursed by the world found their blessing in each other. They'd survived the storm. Now they were learning to dance in the rain. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Not with menace, but with promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new reasons to keep fighting. But tonight, they had everything they needed. They had each other. They had their children. They had a life they'd built from ashes and determination. And that, they both knew, was the only magic that ever really mattered. The sun set on their first day of freedom, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Wade's wounds were cleaned and bandaged. They'd made camp near a spring, hidden among rocks that would keep them safe for one more night. Sarah sat beside Wade as the stars began to emerge, his head resting in her lap. His breathing was steady now, the danger past. "Where do we go from here?" she asked softly, her fingers gently stroking his hair. Wade opened his eyes, looking up at her. "Anywhere, everywhere. Somewhere that doesn't know our names or care about our past. Does such a place exist? Maybe not." He reached up, touching her cheek. "But we'll keep looking until we find it." Sarah caught his hand, pressed a kiss to his palm. "You know they'll tell stories about us. The cursed woman and the broken lawman. They'll make us into legends." "Good." Wade's voice was rough but determined. "Let them. Let every woman who's been told she's too much or too different hear the story. Let them know that survival isn't a curse. It's a choice. And you? What will they say about you? That I was a fool who threw away his last chance at a quiet death for a woman who didn't need saving." He smiled. "And they'd be right. I did need you," Sarah whispered. "Maybe not to save me, but to remind me I was worth saving." Wade pulled her down until her forehead rested against his. "We saved each other. That's how it works. Real love isn't about rescue. It's about showing up when things get hard and saying, 'I'm still here.' Is that what this is?" Sarah's voice trembled. "Love? Yeah." Wade said it simply, honestly. Yeah, I think it is. Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. But for once, they weren't born of pain or fear. They were something else entirely. Relief, joy, hope. I love you too, she whispered, even though I probably shouldn't. Even though we barely know each other. Even though Wade silenced her with a kiss. When they parted, he was smiling. We've got time to figure out the details, he said. Right now, let's just be. So they sat there under the stars, two people who'd been broken by the world and remade by each other. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring, didn't know if they'd ever truly be safe. But they had tonight. They had each other. And sometimes that was enough. The desert wind whispered through the rocks, carrying away the old stories and making room for new ones. Stories of courage and survival, of love found in the most unlikely places. And somewhere in the distance, the future waited, unknown, uncertain, but finally full of possibility. Because they'd learned something that no curse or superstition could touch. That the strongest magic in the world wasn't dark or light. It was human. It was choice. It was two people deciding that despite everything, despite the odds, despite the past, they would keep fighting, keep living, keep loving, together. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Stories like this remind us that everyone deserves a second chance, and that sometimes the most cursed thing about us is our refusal to let others define who we are. Hit that subscribe button for more tales of love, survival, and the untamed West, where second chances bloom like desert flowers after rain.